Picture this. You are Thomas, a merchant of fine silks and spices. You've had a successful season. That satchel at your hip, it's full of coins. Gold, silver, a king's ransom. And it is, at this very moment, your greatest burden. Every clink and jingle screams, "Rob me!" to every cut purse and bandit in the city. Your back aches from the weight. You need to travel to another city to buy new stock. A journey of 100 miles through bandit-infested forests. How do you move your wealth? You can't. It's too heavy, too dangerous. This was the daily reality for anyone with wealth for millennia. This was the problem. A problem so immense, so frustrating, that it forced humanity to invent one of its most powerful and precarious institutions, the bank. But our story doesn't start in a medieval square. We have to go much, much further back, to the sun-baked river valleys of ancient Mesopotamia, over 4,000 years ago. Here, they didn't have Thomas's problem with coins, because they had an even more fundamental one. Their money was stuff: barley, sheep, oxen. Try carrying a herd of oxen to a temple 50 miles away to pay your taxes. It was bulky, it was perishable, and a stubborn ox could ruin your whole day. So what did they do? They turned to the safest, most secure places in the ancient world, the temples. These weren't just houses of gods, they were the economic hearts of the city, with thick walls and devoted guards. People began depositing their grain, their livestock, their precious metals in the temple for safekeeping. The temple priests, being the accountants of the gods, developed the first written records of debt and credit. They issued clay tablets, not physical money, but promises. A tablet might say, "The bearer of this token is owed 10 measures of barley from the temple granary." This was the genesis, the moment value began to separate from stuff. You weren't trading barley anymore, you were trading a promise for barley. The first bank wasn't a building with a fancy sign, it was a temple, and the first bankers were priests. For centuries, this system of secure storage and written credit worked on a local scale. But empires grew. Trade routes stretched across continents. The Roman Empire had its sophisticated financial systems, but with its fall, much of that complexity vanished in Western Europe. The problem of moving wealth came back with a vengeance, until a most unlikely group of bankers emerged from the smoke and blood of the Crusades. They were monks, but not just any monks. They were the Knights Templar, warrior monks. Their original mission was to protect pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. But how do you protect a pilgrim carrying a lifetime savings to fund their journey? The Templars found a way. They established a network of fortresses called preceptories from London to Jerusalem. A pilgrim could deposit their coin at the Temple Church in London and receive a letter of credit. They could then travel, unburdened by wealth, across Europe and the Holy Land and present their letter at a Templar fortress in Acre to receive their funds in the local currency. For a fee, of course. Think about the sheer brilliance of that. The Templars had created the first international banking network. They weren't just strongboxes, they were a system for transferring value across thousands of miles without moving a single physical coin. They lent money to kings, managed the finances of entire nations, and became for a time the most powerful financial institution on earth. Their system solved Thomas the Merchant's problem perfectly, but power attracts envy, and the Templars' story ends in fire and suppression. Their system was lost, but the idea remained, a seed waiting for the right conditions to grow again, and those conditions emerged in the unlikely setting of 17th century London. After the English Civil War and the Great Fire, people were distrustful of the state and of keeping their wealth under their mattresses. They needed a safe place, and they found it in the vaults of an unexpected profession, the goldsmiths. Goldsmiths already had strong vaults to protect their own gold and precious materials. It was a natural progression for wealthy Londoners to pay the goldsmiths a fee to store their own gold and silver coins for safekeeping. The goldsmith would give them a paper receipt. This receipt was a promise. Pay to the bearer on demand a certain amount of gold. At first, you'd just take that receipt back to the goldsmith to reclaim your exact coins when you needed them. But then, something fascinating happened. People started trading the receipts themselves. Why go through the hassle of withdrawing your heavy gold to pay the merchant for a new carriage when you could just hand him the goldsmith's paper promise? The merchant trusted that the goldsmith was good for it. He'd accept the paper, and maybe later, he'd use it to pay his own supplier. These goldsmith receipts became the first widely circulated banknotes in England. Paper money was born, not from a royal decree, but from sheer convenience. Now, here is where the story takes its most crucial and most precarious turn. The goldsmiths sat in their shops, surrounded by these vaults full of gold that belonged to other people, and they noticed something peculiar. Day after day, week after week, that gold just sat there. Only a tiny fraction of it was ever withdrawn at any given time. People were happy using the paper receipts. The gold itself had become dormant, and a thought, both brilliant and dangerous, occurred to them. What if we lent some of this gold out? Not the physical gold gold, of course, but we could. Write new receipts, new promises for gold that we don't technically have sitting in the vault at this very moment. We know that not everyone will come asking for their gold at once. We could charge interest on these new loans and make a fortune. So, a merchant comes to a goldsmith. He needs a loan of 100 gold pieces to finance a new ship. The goldsmith doesn't hand him a heavy bag of coins. He hands him a freshly printed banknote, a promise for 100 gold pieces from his vault. The merchant uses that note to pay the shipbuilder, who circulates it further. That new note, that new money, is now out in the world, doing work, building a ship, creating wealth. But the original gold from the goldsmith's depositors is still sitting in the vault. This is the moment banking changed forever. This is the invention of fractional reserve banking. Let's break down that intimidating term, because it is the absolute core of our modern world. Imagine the goldsmith's vault holds 1,000 gold coins, deposited by his customers. That's his reserve. He now issues new paper banknotes as loans for another 1,000 gold coins. He is now promising a total of 2,000 gold coins worth of value, but he only has 1,000 actual coins in the vault. His reserve of real gold is a fraction of his total promises. In this case, it's a 1-to-2 ratio, a reserve ratio of 50%. He's only holding in reserve a fraction of what he owes. This was a revolution. The goldsmiths, without really intending to, had discovered how to create money out of thin air. Not physical coin, but monetary value. The entire money supply was no longer limited by the amount of gold in the king's treasury or silver in the mines. It was limited only by the banker's confidence and his careful calculation that not everyone would want their gold back at the same time. This power to create money was astoundingly productive. It funded the Industrial Revolution, the great voyages of discovery, the railways, and the factories. It provided the fuel for economic growth on a scale previously unimaginable. A merchant, like our friend Thomas, no longer had to carry gold or rely on a monastic order. He could deposit his gold in London, get a letter of credit or banknotes, travel to Amsterdam, and his agent there could access funds that had been created through loans within the Dutch banking system. Commerce exploded. But this new power came with a terrifying vulnerability. It was all built on a single, fragile foundation: confidence. The system only works as long as people believe the goldsmith or the bank can give them their gold back when they ask for it. What happens if a rumor starts? A whisper that a certain goldsmith has lent out too much, that he might not have enough gold. It starts with a few nervous people. They go to the bank and present their paper notes asking for gold. The goldsmith pays them, of course, but others see the line forming. Fear is a virus. The whisper becomes a roar. Soon, a crowd is gathered outside the bank, a run on the bank. Everyone wants their gold back now, but the goldsmith doesn't have it all. He only has a fraction. He can only pay a fraction of his depositors. The rest are left with worthless paper. The goldsmith goes bankrupt. The businesses that relied on his loans collapse. The chain reaction begins. This was the devil's bargain of fractional reserve banking. It unlocked unprecedented economic growth, but it introduced the modern phenomenon of the financial panic, the bank run. The entire edifice of paper money, which now makes up over 90% of all money in existence, is a shared fiction. A fiction we all agree to believe in, as long as we have confidence that the bank and the system behind it is trustworthy. So, what problem forced humans to invent banks? It was the problem of weight, of distance, of danger, the sheer physical inconvenience of money itself. We started with temples safeguarding grain, moved to warrior monks safeguarding pilgrims' travel, and ended with goldsmiths who stumbled upon the alchemy of confidence, learning to spin promises into gold. Modern finance is a system of trust, evolved from ancient promises, that creates wealth through confidence while perpetually risking collapse.